All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining today. Welcome to How to Set Up the Social Environment for Learning Success. I'm Jennifer Miller, and I'm excited that you're joining today. We had a huge sign up, so those who aren't joining live today are going to be watching the recording, and for those who are joining live, hopefully we can have an interactive session. Please type into the chat, hello, I'm so-and-so, your name, maybe what role you're joining with the hat on. Are you a parent and an educational professional? Are you a nonprofit leader that supports families? Maybe you're a school psychologist, school counselor. Please let me know what role you're joining with, and also where you're joining from. So go ahead and type that into the chat. I am Jennifer Miller. If you've joined these webinars before, you know me. I focus on parenting and social and emotional learning. I spent 25 years working in the field, and most of that time was in schools, trying to help schools integrate social and emotional skills into the academic curriculum. And when I became a parent, it became apparent how much I needed to put that learning into application in the messy, raw context of family life. And so this has been very much a learning journey for me, and I'm so appreciative that I can dialogue with others in this process. Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for joining today. Anne, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for typing into the chat here. I'm going to back out of this so I can actually see the chat box. Aha. Okay, great. Caitlin, parent of 7, welcome. Thanks for joining. New York City, great. Anne is from Colorado. You provide parent support through a nonprofit, awesome. Katie from Roswell, New Mexico, gather some strategies for parents to use with kiddos at home, especially as many of our parents don't have home internet access. Oh, that can be really challenging. My intent for you today is that you will leave with strategies that have worked for other parents, that are based on research-based strategies, and hopefully we can dialogue about that. Please, if you want to talk, please turn on your camera, raise your hand. If you know the raise your hand function, please do that. I feel free to ask questions throughout the session. You can certainly give input on the chat, ask questions on the chat, but I very much want this to be an interactive session. And I notice you all have your Zoom pros. You've already muted, so you know what you're doing in that department. But I also encourage you to show parents these functions if you're working with parents, and to go over them with your children, because they don't automatically know how to use Zoom. And I think hand signals can be really helpful. Raising hand if you have something to say. This is the Me Too sign if children especially want to agree with what you're saying, or really feel what you're saying. Of course, this is hooray or clapping. Yes, a thumbs up. No, a thumbs down. Maybe a thumbs in the middle, and care you can show with the hand to your heart. So I think all those symbols are really helpful to show our children. I ask, how are you feeling in every presentation I do? I'd love to know, how are you feeling honestly? This is a chart that I'm using with my son in homeschool, and I think it's really helpful. We can move the Post-its around. He can fill in his own Post-its, and the hot feelings could be what we consider positive or more challenging threat emotions like anger or embarrassed, or could be really excited, anticipatory for the day. So please let me know how you're feeling today. I'll model and say that I'm feeling excited to talk about this topic. I think the social environment is one that is a big worry for parents right now, and I think that we need more support around this. So I'm really delighted to be sharing in this conversation with you. The purpose of today is very much to offer you very concrete ideas for creating a socially caring and connected place, whether it's in your home or in your school, or a kind of mix or hybrid of both, to maximize learning opportunities. And then to plan for social connections and support learning, collaboration, and social and emotional intelligence in family life. So hopefully that's your agenda too. I also share this at the beginning. Basically, what this says is every family culture is unique, and you are your own best problem solver for your family. So I can offer ideas and strategies, but ultimately you have to say, yeah, this really fits with our values and our sense of beliefs and what's right, or no, it doesn't, and that's perfectly fine. There is no right, there's no perfect. um, I'll ask you too, what big picture lessons could your children be learning from this unique time? Certainly, we know that looking back in past generations that have come through major challenges, like called the greatest generation, the generation who went through World War II and the Depression and the Spanish flu, they came out of that increasing our standard of living significantly, and doing it with some new virtues and values like work ethic, like integrity. um, and so how can this generation emerge from these tough times in ways that build resilience and build skills in which they can thrive? So let's talk about those social and emotional skills. I want to just share this piece, that everything that I look at when I ask questions about how does this look like in family life, this is always the lens through which I look, which is social and emotional learning. How I ask the question whenever there's a challenge, how is this an opportunity to build any of these 5 competencies in my child: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making. And also, it's any challenge is an opportunity to hone them in myself, and we are learning these skills for a lifetime. So how can we take advantage of this opportunity? So I offer this as a guide for our discussion today, that I will kind of go through the opportunities and complexities of the central relationships in our children's lives, and specifically the opportunity of right now, and how we can promote this learning environment that can be successful, and that we know is based on caring relationships, that caring relationships are essential for education to take place. So so we'll talk about, I left family for later in the presentation. Actually, I started with friends and peers. We'll talk about relationships with families, relationship with teachers, with the community, and also our intimate family, uh, and and how that all impacts our children. There's some myths going around right now that I'd like to debunk, and maybe these are long time myths. But one is that kids, particularly, I think it's a myth among teenagers that they need to be a part of a large group of friends in order to be happy. It's just not so, and we'll look at the research on that. Kids need to be at school in person to be mentally healthy. That's also a myth. That is not so. We can create and promote their social and emotional skills from home, and they can be just as mentally healthy in the home environment. And the third is that all kids are experiencing tough times as trauma. That is not so, and I'll share some research on that right away. So here's a wonderful quote that I really appreciate. I'm going to have to exit out of here to move my chat box so that I can see it. Apologies for this. Okay, we'll go back. I can't read it, so we're gonna go in and out here. No situation need be inherently traumatic. It's how we experience the circumstances of our lives that determines whether or not we will find them traumatizing. The presence of caring adults who help children decode the ever unfolding situations of their world is a great protective buffer for the child. So this is really good news. I had a group of parents who had a traumatic event happen with their sports team, and they all sat around in my office, and they were so worried that this experience would traumatize all their children. And I encourage them to look around at the team support network that they had put together and all the love that they were surrounding their children with in this tough time where a child had been injured and died. The reaction, how we as adults support our children through tough times, makes a significant difference in whether they experience it as trauma or whether they can integrate it into their learning and really understand life in a bigger and better way and cope with the pain in healthy ways. So we really are critical to that process. But here's the conditional side of that. If we as parents are traumatized ourselves and we are so filled with anxiety that we cannot offer that support, she calls it a double whammy, because our children experience emotional contagion. They experience that anxiety we're feeling, and if we don't support them through that, they can experience it as trauma. The trick is support. How can we feel anxiety, they feel anxiety, we're all feeling anxiety. How can we be sure and talk about it? How can we be sure and deal with it with healthy coping strategies? How can we work together as a family team on managing the anxiety so that we all come out stronger? It is absolutely possible. It is really the quality, not the quantity of relationships that matter. One study with teenagers looked at their ratings, their self-ratings of happiness and sense of well-being, and it across the board, if they had a close relationship with one friend, they had a better sense of well-being than the teens who had 9 friends, but they weren't necessarily close relationships. So it really is quality over quantity when it comes to friendships. And 98% of teens from the Pew Research Center said they have one or more close friends. So that was in 2018, but that's something that we can keep in mind to promote. Now, this is really interesting. Depending on where we stand on online friendships, of course, Screens can be a worry for parents, but it is also the place where everybody is. Our kids are connecting more and more. They're actually making new friends online. And those friends that they meet online can actually help them show sides of themselves that they don't feel comfortable showing in person, because of core interest groups that kind of come together. So one stat was 7 out of 10 teens receive support from friends through social media, and they say that it connects them better to the feelings and lives of their friends. So for our children, online friendships are an important part of their social network. Now, I'd like to ask this before we go into how you grow your digital citizen in your household. Give me a sense. How are you growing your children's digital citizenship? How do you interact with them around their digital participation? I'd love to see some thoughts from you. If you could write in the chat, like, what is it a regular part of your conversation? How do you act? Do you prepare them with language to use? Do you spend time talking about different kinds of social media? How is their digital life a part of your family life? I'll give you just a few minutes to think about that. So this is really key for us right now. Our children, if they weren't digital citizens before, they are now with the global pandemic. So how can we treat their digital community just like we treat their school community? At dinner every night, or whenever we gather as a family, it is a regular, the class is a regular part of our conversation. Oh, how's your friend so-and-so doing? Who'd you talk to at lunch today? How can we make their digital community a regular part of our family conversation in the very same way, so that we get to know and understand that community? How can we treat our children like the digital natives that they are, and learn from them, put them in the driver's seat, snuggle up next to them and say, give me a tour. You're so excited about this video game. You're so excited about this new app. I know nothing about it. Give me a tour. Show me what it's all about. Also, we can teach our children to rate and review their own content before even diving into a new app, a new video game. Go with them to Common Sense Media online. It is a tremendous site where you can type in a movie, you can type in a program, you can type in a book, and it will give you instantly a review and the age appropriateness. Do this with your child or teen a number of times, and then encourage them to do it themselves proactively, so that you are reviewing before you engage in content. Also, instead of mom and dad enforcing screen times with the best intentions, we want to keep you healthy, right? We know it impacts your brain development. Instead of mom and dad being the nag, it's really important as a family to learn together about the impacts of screen time on your child's brain development. So how can you make that a family conversation? How can you learn the basics together? And I included this. I will be sending out this PowerPoint, so you have this link. There's a wonderful video on YouTube called Digital Dossier, which helps your child learn that once they type something in a chat room, it's a permanent record, and it talks about their digital footprint. These are all really important issues to help grow your digital citizen. And then there are many other ways to promote social connections online. Um, Morning meetings are a wonderful way to get the learning day started. Maybe you set it up with friends before school starts and you do some deep breathing together. You do a connection, a greeting, a sharing of a personal question. It could be as simple as, what's your favorite animal? Or what do you love to do when you're off screens? But it is a way to connect children before they start their learning day. There are plenty of cooperative games that can be translated to the Zoom environment. So how can we promote collaboration even when we need to interact through screens? And I'd love if you have ideas, if you have been doing interesting Zoom interactions, please type it in the chat, send it along. I'd love to share with our audience here. And then in person, if you are being careful about interacting in person, and being careful about interacting with others. Many have done bubbles where they take in one special friend and see them regularly. We have not done that. We've done bike rides, and you can certainly do hikes with masks. We did a community bear hunt where everyone in the community, well, not everyone, but a lot of people in the community put teddy bears. They hid them in windows or doorways. And what a wonderful community builder. So there are ways to socialize in person. Let's talk about when things go wrong. Whether in person or on screens, bullying is nothing to mess with. And really, bullying happens, it's not about one mean comment. It is much more about a sequence of power struggles of a child trying to belittle, humiliate, or dominate a particular child over time. And it can be really destructive and hurtful, and something that we want our children to be prepared for, should it ever happen to them. Yet, I will let you know that when children and teens are surveyed, more than half said that they would not tell a parent if they were being bullied. Now, that statistic is disturbing, of course, and I'm sure there are multiple reasons why they would not tell a parent. But since that is the case, we need to look for signs. Is our child having much greater emotional swings? Are they withdrawn more? Are they really down? Are they very irritable? How can we find opportunities to not put them on the spot, but to listen with compassion and leave our judgments behind? If we criticize the bullier, certainly we can judge the behavior. In other words, those words were wrong. That was a mean choice of words. But if we judge the person, the classmate, the peer, then we can lose some of the trust that we've built with our child as they try to manage or negotiate very challenging, difficult peer relationships. It can also get them into more trouble if they go back and echo our words to others. So leave the judgments behind, echo compassion, and then if it's clearly emotional abuse, racial slurs, unjust words, go through the process, help your child learn how to unfollow, how to remove them from the group chat, take them out of your life. And if you don't know, you can look it up, but make sure that your child realizes that they don't have to put up with that kind of criticism over time, and that they can remove themselves and, as this girl said, just say stop. Let's talk about family life. We are in a bit of a pressure cooker right now in family life. We are together much more often. If you are being careful about COVID, you're with your family members maybe 24/7. If your children are remote learning, they're home all the time. And just by the very nature of us being together all the time, we are going to fight. Fighting does not represent a weakness. It just represents our humanity, that we are human, right? So there are some very specific ways that we can argue with one another that help strengthen our relationships. Believe it or not, there are ways that we can argue that actually bring us closer together. And there are ways that we can argue that are difficult to recover from, that can destroy our trust and intimacy. And so it's really important to look at ways to fight fairly. And some of those are, how can we own our own feelings, voice our own feelings? How can we address the problem and not place blame? In other words, the problem is out here and not about any one person, but how can we use language that's not you, but is, when I look at this situation, I get very frustrated because, so using that kind of iMessage language. I will also, in a follow-up to this, send out the Fighting Fairly Family Pledge. It is a one-pager that lays out these 5 practices to agree to, 6 practices to avoid, and your family goes over it together and you sign it together so that you really agree on these ways to fight fairly. Now, sibling conflict is also going to happen. So how can we prepare our siblings to get along in the household? One family I know, every Sunday night at dinner, they light a candle, and each family member goes around and comments on a kindness that they witnessed another family member doing throughout the week. And what it did, that process actually changed how siblings interacted, because they were actively looking. They knew Sunday night the conversation was coming up, so they were actively looking for kindnesses, and they were actively engaging in kindness in order to have something to talk about. What a great incentive. So so that's a wonderful practice. Another one is the peace rose, which is this this picture, what this picture is about. And you can use a silk rose that you keep in a vase somewhere accessible in your family, or it's a wonderful project. You can make one as a craft with your children, and they have more ownership over it, obviously, if they make it themselves. But you practice with your child, your children, the peace rose. And when you're having a difficulty and somebody realizes that the heat is arising, maybe the tone of voice is raising, children are getting upset, one of your children can go over and get the peace rose and offer it to the other. And when the child offers the peace rose, it is the symbol that, let's work this out together. And I have a lovely problem-solving process you can hang up with it. I'll be sure to send that out to you. I'm going to make a note to do that. But this is a great way to set your siblings up for success so that they can work their way through a conflict on their own. You don't have to be the conflict manager in the household. So this gives them incredibly valuable practice for the present and for their future in working through their own conflicts with their siblings. And then how can we plan for emergencies? If I were to ask you if you have a fire safety plan in your household, like do you have smoke alarms? Do you have an exit plan if you have a fire? When I ask audiences this question, everybody raises their hand. I mean, without exception, everybody's got a fire safety plan. And then I ask the question, which I'll ask to you, which is, how often or do you ever have emotional fires in your family life? Of course, everybody has emotional fires in their family life. How many have a plan for emotional fires in their family life? Now, in all my presentations, there was only one person, one time, who said they had planned ahead for emotional emergencies. But really, we know that we are going to lose our temper. It's going to happen. Again, we're human. So how can we plan ahead? We know this is a nice little picture of the brain, that when we're emotionally hijacked, we are in our fight, flight, or freeze reflex, and the rest of our brain has been taken over by a chemical, and we don't have access to our logic and creativity. So if we have set the plan that we're going to be amazing and so emotionally intelligent in that moment of great frustration, great anger, it's not going to happen. So how can we plan ahead for these emergencies? And again, I will send you in follow-up a tool that is another one-pager, so easy to use, but it will prompt you through these questions, and I call it the emotional safety plan. How will you notice when your temperature is arising? What body signs do you feel? Is your face getting hot? Is your heart beating a mile a minute? What triggers you? Our children can push our most raw nerves, and sometimes they're the same thing over and over again. They do something they know is going to push our buttons. So what are your triggers? How do you know? And then what are you going to say? And it better be quick, brief. Mommy needs 5 minutes, and then where will you go? And it could be like this mom literally sat down on the floor, made sure her baby was safe in a crib, and closed her eyes and went inside. And she took the time, she's breathing, and she's taking the time she needs, that amazing pause that creates self-regulation, that removes that chemical from isolating our cave person brain to accessing our creativity and our logic. And she doesn't respond until she has returned to some sense of calm, that she can make a good decision about her response. How can we be proactive about planning for emotional safety? Another thing that I like to call out when we as a family are especially home together so often is sharing power. How can we share power in family life? And some of that is involving our children in decision making and allowing them to make choices along with us. But another aspect of sharing power is household responsibilities. How can we make sure that we're working as a team to create a learning environment that is clean, that's organized? And perhaps if you are doing remote learning, or you're doing homeschooling as I am, there's cleanup need every single day. So how can you create that as a part of your schedule? There's a routine. After our last class, before our learning reflection for the day, we look around and say, what do we need to put back together so that we can return to home life and put school away for the day? And what's everyone's part in that? And I think I notice it's magical if family members can work together. If you just say it's your time to do chores, our children will resist. But if we're working as a team, it makes a huge difference. If we have a regular time, a regular routine, it makes a huge difference. If our children know exactly where things go and we've practiced with them, makes a huge difference. And also you can make it fun, turn on some music and make that routine enjoyable. I mentioned the pause. The pause is not a nice to have. In research, it is the difference between acting on impulse or acting in a way that's emotionally intelligent, and particularly in a time when anxiety is living just under the skin, our temper is going to flare more readily. It just is. We're going to get frustrated more easily. We're going to lose our self-control more easily. So when we get that bait from our child, whatever it challenge they present to us. And again, part of growing up is testing boundaries. So we know it's going to happen. How can we not take the other side of the rope? How can we take a pause? And some adults find that it's helpful to say stop or pause, not necessarily to anyone around them, but to themselves. But they say it out loud to help them remember that that pause and that moment will help them make better choices. Let's talk about your relationship with your child's teacher. We know that a child's relationship with their teacher is critical in their learning. If a child really can't stand a particular subject or is fearful about a subject, if a caring teacher loves that subject and shows that he loves that subject, it can really turn around our child's feeling about the subject and ability to learn. So it is just that important that we cultivate a caring relationship. What I encourage families to do is to not wait to reach out, to not wait to develop that relationship. And I know we feel like teachers have a great burden right now. They always do, but now it is even bigger. And they have a lot of anxiety. So we may worry about imposing ourselves. But the truth is that teachers want to get to know your family, but may not have time to reach out individually. So this is a wonderful get to know you where you can send to your teacher, our family wants to get to know you. Here's a picture of our child's name, his birthday. Here are some things about our family. And one thing that I encourage all families to be sure and do when you're initiating relationships with teachers, whether it's over screens or in person, is to find out in the beginning of the school year, and it's never too late, how does your teacher want to be communicated with best? Are they an email type of person? Are they a phone call type of person? Do they prefer a stop by? It's really important to know how they prefer to be communicated with, so that you can respect that and get in touch in ways that are appropriate. if you are only on screens right now, then email and Zoom are your best tools. So then how can you initiate a relationship with your teacher? Even set up, ask, can we have a 5-10 minute Zoom just to say hello, just to show our faces in our household, and get the ball rolling with the school year. You will be better off when problems come along if you've already developed that caring relationship. And then our children don't know how to be advocates for their own learning. And it's hard enough when they're in person in school, but if they're remote, reaching out to their teacher can be very intimidating. Perhaps they're just learning their writing skills and don't feel confident with writing out an email. So as a parent, how can we sit down with our child and reach out to the teacher together? Maybe you craft an email together, write it together, and talk about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, or initiate a Zoom together. Use that interactive modeling by doing it side by side. And then when you're away, talking about reflecting on it. What did we do? How did we introduce ourselves? How did we sign off? So that your child gets a real sense of how to communicate with his or her teacher. It's super important. This can be a time when our children learn to be advocates for their own learning, but we have to model that communication. And then it is critical that we address right now the racial and cultural justice issues in our family life. We are seeing it in the news. And racial injustice has been going on for many, many decades. And so it is absolutely critical that we start the conversation, if we haven't already, in family life. And if you are a family of color, then how can you talk about the fears, talk about the difficulty of the news stories, the grief, and support one another in the big feelings that are even bigger right now because of the many tragedies that have taken place. If you are a white person, either an educator or a parent, we are all uncomfortable in those conversations. How can you decide that it's too important, that we need to be uncomfortable? And I think children's books are a great way to help get the conversation started. So I have some great children's book recommendations by age and stage on my site. Check it out. And there are some other resources as well that will guide you and your family through those conversations. Remote learning or homeschool learning is an awesome new, perhaps for your family, opportunity to engage in global cultural learning. So how can you make sure that your globe is sitting out, that every time a world history lesson comes up, or a math innovation or technology innovation arises in the curriculum, that you run to the globe and look at where it's coming from and talk about the culture, talk about and learn together. We don't have to be experts as parents. There is no expectation that we are content experts, but how can we learn together? My son, last week, he was learning about ancient African empires. This week, he is learning about ancient China. Last week, we took him to a Somalian market, and we went up and down the aisles and looked at foods that we have never seen before, and we brought a bunch of them home and tried them out. How can you include global learning into your remote learning environment? I encourage you to check out Facing History and Ourselves. It has free lessons online that tie cultural learning to learning about the past, with a real broad look and a deep dive into indigenous cultures, into marginalized cultures. So take a look at that. We as parents are more empathetic, understanding, and patient when we learn about children's social and emotional development. So hopefully just by participating in this webinar today and getting some ideas, feeling like you're not so alone, that this will help extend your patience and empathy as you're working with your child at home, supporting their learning. Every challenge that we face with our children is an opportunity to stand back, reflect, pause, and say, what social and emotional skill is this an opportunity to build? And then we also have this chance to say, and how can we hold up the mirror and look at this moment as this great chance to hone that skill in ourselves? There are lots of free resources on Confident Parents, Confident Kids. So I hope that you use it as a resource for your homeschooling agenda. Cooperative games are listed by social and emotional skill. Book recommendations by age and social emotional skill. Global exploration links online. Parenting book recommendations, and more. So please check it out. If you want to learn more about children's development, or specifically about all the parenting hot topics, I particularly want to point out parentingmontana.org. I've authored all of their tools, and along with a great team of researchers and writers. And these are all on parenting hot topics, and they're all to serve you in dealing with issues like homework, issues like conflict, like teaching listening skills. There's a whole host, and they're by age and stage. What are you taking away today? I gave you a whole lot to think about related to children's friendships, how we can connect as a family with children's digital community, how we can support their friendships online, how we can share power in family life and deal with conflict so that our children feel prepared with social and emotional tools that they can really deal with any chaos in ways that are healthy and constructive. What are you taking away from today? And I will certainly follow up with some tools and resources in the email to you. I encourage you also to join me for Mindful Mondays each Monday this fall, and do note the time change. It's from 11 to 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. Bring your children. It is for children, teens, and parents to join in and really get our minds, our bodies, our hearts, our spirits ready for the learning week. And then coming in October, I'm going to be offering an online course that is really a comprehensive look at children's social and emotional development by age and stage, and also honing parent competency. So I will be announcing that. I'll send it out to you, and look for that very soon. Thank you so much for joining. If anyone has any questions, I am happy and delighted to take questions. So let me know if you have questions. Feel free to enter it into the chat box, or we can I can follow up in email. It's just confidentparentsconfidentkids@gmail.com. Thank you, Ann Sherman, for joining. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And again, I really care about this being a dialogue that's helpful to you. So as there are topics that come up that are really worrying you, keeping you up at night, please keep in touch and let me know how I can support you. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.